My name is Valerie Dueck, and this past year I've had the honor to be one of the mentors for Digital Paths as they were working together with past recipients of the Nova Scotia Talent Trust. And together with my mentee, Carmen Pung, we worked through several different types of stage presentation for getting ready for performances, including written types of preparation like bios and resumes, as well as talking about visualization and feeling more prepared for a performance by what you do in advance by thinking through your program. I always introduce myself as a classical pianist just because there's usually some questions afterwards. And I've lived all around the world, actually. I've lived on 3 different continents, including North America, Europe, and Asia. So for a while, I was traveling around with my trusty piano. Her name was Bernadette, and she moved to all of these different countries with me, and she had a whole bunch of fun stories to tell, like the time she got lost at sea and I couldn't find her for 6 months. And another time where she fell off a truck, not once, but 3 times, fortunately in her crate, and had no damage to her structure, but a few scars afterwards. So I've lived in Canada and Austria, Norway, Kazakhstan, and then most recently Switzerland. So Switzerland was the past 4 years or so, and I've been back in Ottawa for 1 year since then. As a result of living in all of these different countries, I've had a lot of wonderful performance opportunities, including playing at the Musikverein, which is a very big, well-known concert hall in Vienna. And also I was performing for the Kazakh national television station. Along the way, I've been able to do a lot of performing with different organizations as well. So I work as a pianist, I work as a teacher, a professor of piano. I also work together with singers, that's called vocal coaching. And as a result of that work, I've been able to perform with organizations like the Grand Théâtre de Genève and also the Schloss Schönbrunn Theater in Vienna. And here in Ottawa, also with 13 Strings and other organizations as well, working with world-class musicians who perform in major institutions throughout all of North America and across the world. I think competitions are very important and can be very healthy as part of the process in developing your own musical voice. Of course, we know that a lot of times it seems like the results can be rather unfair, but I think that we can learn a lot from the process as well when we start to take into account what were the cues that were given off by the performer that allowed them to in turn win the award. A lot of times, maybe it's not just an auditory cue. Maybe it's something about how they're walking on stage or their stage presence. Maybe it's talking about what they do when they make a mistake. Is it noticeable to the audience, or do they just roll with it? Or maybe they don't sound like they make any mistakes. And how does that affect our perception of what the level of virtuosity was shown in that particular competition? I think that it's really important to do as many competitions as you can when you are young, because it gives you a very good sense of what it will feel like to prepare something to a very high level as a professional. And it will also give you a sense of the other stresses that are involved, and so that you can learn how to manage those stresses when you're on stage. I think this is very important for us to learn how to do to be healthy, well-rounded professional musicians. So when I was working with Carmen, she came actually with a very well-presented resume already and a really good bio. But she told me that it was her older sister who had helped her put it together. And so I'm not sure if her older sister hadn't already been trained in some way in the university system how to do that, that it would have come to me in the same way. I think it's a very helpful way also to set your own goals when you look at your own resume, and where you can see, okay, I have this experience, but maybe in this area I might be lacking something. Or when you're talking about your experiences in your bio, how you present that to the public, that's kind of the first impression that they're going to have of you. So you want to learn how a bio is normally crafted, but then also you want to make it sound like you, what makes you stand out, rather than just listing through this whole checklist of things that you've accomplished. How can you have your own personal voice come out as well when you're writing your biography? When I was growing up, I actually went through a mentorship program with the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra. As a young person, I played violin and piano, so I was able to participate in the orchestral program in that way. And I found it very important to see that almost that daily life experience of what it's like to go to work as a musician. I had experienced a lot of music growing up, and both my parents loved music but were amateurs. And so to see what it's like to have a job as a musician was really a very important part of preparing myself for what kinds of jobs there are to do in the field of music. So I do believe very strongly in mentorship programs. In fact, so much so that I continue to have mentors myself. And I think it's very important because it's a part of our lifelong learning. As a teacher and a professor, I need to make sure that I'm always learning the next thing. And the moment I stop learning myself is the moment I need to stop teaching. So it's very important to look to others to see which paths they've taken, be curious about finding out what they do, the way their routine is, how they manage their daily lives even is a very important part of understanding how that works, and learning all aspects of mentorship. So it could be whether it's the business side of music, the entrepreneurial side, how do you keep track of your accounts? How do you keep track of your contracts? How do you write your bio, your resume? How do you think about stage presence? How do you think about all of these things aside from just practicing the piano? There are so many other components that are really essential. So I value mentorship programs like this one very highly, because I think it's a really important way to engage with people in a one-on-one way, where you're listening to what their needs are too, and you're responding in a way that can really help them see something in a new way that they hadn't noticed before. I've personally found it a lot easier to actually hire someone as a mentor and a coach, because then you have a very clear understanding of what the relationship is going to be. You know that you're going to meet this many times. You have kind of almost, you draft a contract together to say we're going to cover this in our work together. And when that contract is finished, then you can decide if you want to sign up for another one. So I find in that way, it's really very helpful, because then both parties are investing their utmost. If I'm getting paid as a mentor, I also am going to make sure that I'm bringing everything to the table. I also work a lot as mentoring without getting paid too. And I do have very strong mentors in my life that at one point, maybe they were my professor, but that relationship has continued over time, where I can always turn to someone and ask them for feedback or what they would do if they were in a similar situation. I have a strong community of other fellow piano teachers who I can ask questions about too as well. And I actually can always go to my family too. Both my brother and sister are professional musicians, and we talk a lot about learning from each other and learning from each other's types of jobs, and how that can help us in our own personal jobs as well. I think the thing about this setup is that it's not so common in the music world so far, but if you look at it in the sports world, it fully exists there. Or if you look at it in the celebrity world, it fully exists there. So it's a matter of the on-call system is just a little bit tricky for people to access because they don't know where to find it. And I think that's an area that could be improved upon vastly. So in terms of stage presence, or I think what we're talking about by stage presence is, if I'm very nervous, can I go on stage and give the impression that I'm not? Well, yes, you can do that with practice. You can do that with a sense of focus and where you're turning your attention when you are on stage. So making sure that you have a plan for how that's going to feel when you walk out on stage. And all of this can be figured out step by step. If you're performing in a space or a hall or a building that you've never performed in before, it's really helpful if you can at least see a picture of the stage beforehand, because then you can imagine yourself walking out. As pianists, it's really quite a disadvantage if we don't even get the chance to play the piano before we walk on stage. So we want to be able to imagine the whole process in our minds, A to Z, visualizing the process, going, how will I walk on stage? How will I greet my audience? How will I play each and every single note of the piece that I'm going to play? And can I hear it exactly the way I want it to go? How will I feel when I'm done? Will I feel relief? Will I feel joy? Will I feel excited about what I was able to share? Will I feel love for what I do? And how will I feel as I stand up, take my bow, and walk off the stage? So this is a part of visualizing that athletes use all the time. So I think we're pretty familiar with the idea of the diver who climbs up all of these stairs, walks to the end of the diving board, goes through their routine in their mind, then actually executes and lands in the water. So what they want to make sure that they're doing when they're visualizing is that that there are no flaws. They want to be able to visualize it perfectly, because the amazing thing is that the brain will believe that you've already done it. So we can use that strategy when we're playing the piano too, or any musical instrument, because if we can actually execute it flawlessly in our minds, then we can know that we're capable of doing it on stage. It's very revealing, because when you first try to do this exercise, going through your music in your mind, or even with your score in front of you, you will notice where you start to make little flaws, where there are little, I changed the tempo here. Oh, my concentration went and I don't remember what my left hand is doing here. Those kind of things reveal themselves to you. Then you can work on that part in order to make sure that you can execute it successfully in your mind's eye. So I love using visualization for preparing for a performance. I wouldn't do a performance without it. It's really, really essential. But one of the things too is that the way the brain works, if you can feel the feeling of the success and the joy and the emotion that you have at the end of the performance, that also helps your brain to believe that you've already done it, and now it's just a matter of sitting down and executing. So this is the beginning of my fall season, and the first thing that I do when I have this very first lesson is we write down what the goals are for the year. So with some students, it's, I want to finish my grade 10 exam. With some students, it's, I want to do this competition, or I want to get into this school. With other students, it's just a matter of, I'd really like to be able to finish this book that I have, this brand new book that we're starting, or this one that I started last year. I want to be able to feel like I've accomplished this, or I want to do this exam, so I feel like a sense of accomplishment. And then we work through together. If I know what their goals are, I can help them achieve them. If I don't know what they are, we're both stuck. And throughout the year, we revisit that. So again, in January, the first lesson in January, I always talk about, okay, what's your piano New Year's resolution? What do you want? This was your goal in September. How is that goal going? Do we want to look for a different goal, or do you still think you're on track to achieve that by the end of this year? So that we're constantly revisiting it instead of just, oh, that was a fun exercise and now let's move on to something else. Well, a convention, I think there are conventions for sure for music where people can go. And I think a lot of conventions, even for classical music, for, again, the business of music, the business sides of things, that I use that word like business, but still, we're talking about how we create art, how we can put art out there and make it appealing and interesting and provoking to people that will make them want to come back again. So yeah, I do believe that there could be more parties with classical music, but I also believe that where we need to begin is building a sense of community. And I do see that that is a risky area right now, given the post-pandemic period that we're launching ourselves into, that we really need to look at how we can support each other in this industry, how as musicians we support each other, but then how as music lovers we can support the music lovers as well. Is it the role of the music lover to build the community, or is it the role of the performer to build the community, or is it an administrative task? So I think there's a lot. In fact, I think everybody needs to work together. That's the very nature of community itself. But yes, I think that we are so ready for bringing this to that moment, this type of music, to that moment of being able to express it in a fun way, in an engaging way. I'm thinking right away about, any kind of launch that someone could do. Those are really fun ways of getting new people to come and explore. When I have a student who's feeling quite nervous, or maybe feeling like they can't get a handle on their stress or their anxiety before a performance, I introduce them to the idea called the alter ego, which I read about in a book called Alter Ego by Todd Herman. He's actually a Canadian, and he started working with sports teams, but now works with high functioning business professionals. And he talks about that if you have this kind of persona that you can step into, then all the fear that you have about the criticism that might be coming your way, you can address that by just saying, well, it wasn't me who did that, it was my alter ego. So a really good example of a person who is well known for having an alter ego is Beyonce. So she was very public and vocal about not feeling free to dance the way she needed to dance, to put herself really out there for her shows. And so she developed her own personal alter ego of Sasha Fierce, which you may have heard of before too. And she famously retired this alter ego once she finally felt like she could step into that person and that was a part of her being instead of a side person. So this is an interesting idea to explore. Can we step into that feeling of, okay, this is my stage presence persona, this is my at-home persona, this is who I am when I'm, making soup, whatever the case is. But you can explore the idea of, can you still be honest and true to the music, even if you have kind of like almost this protective barrier around you that you can step into? And a lot of actors do talk about having kind of an alter ego that gives the interviews when they have an interview for a magazine or television show, that they step into their alter ego almost like another character that they play. That person gives the interview, and then they don't feel so badly if they get criticized for something that they said, or something goes published and their words were taken out of context, because, well, that's just how my alter ego Barbara put that, but I would never I don't really agree with that anyway. So those are some ideas that you can look into as well, but also maintaining that those personas are there not as a substitute for the work and the practicing that you have to do and the studying of the music, the way you're going to convey it, but simply maybe for those few seconds when you first walk on stage, or when you're coming off the stage as well, that you almost have this little protective barrier around yourself.